Here's the case for a maxillary Haas-type RPE, and the Haas-type RPE has the acrylic that pushes against the palatal walls. But this particular case has this massive maxillary tori. It's bilateral and it's pretty substantial. Now I put wax down in here in the void where down in the roof of the pallet it just really concaved in there, and if I hadn't filled that in with wax, there's no way if I got acrylic in there I'd be able to get it out without breaking the model up real badly. Now I've got some relief over the tori now with wax, but that's not going to be nearly enough. Now I don't know firsthand, but I've heard that if you push on these on a torus, the tissue's like stretched over it. If you push on it, it hurts. So you know, what do you do here? The part of the function of the appliance is to push on the palatal walls, but if you got maxillary tori, how do you do that without causing pain? Well, I've talked about this case, and the doctor wants this wire. Well, let me just go over the whole case that we talked about. Wants the wire up at the on the occlusal edge here, and he wants it on the mesial half, so that when I solder this, I'm going to wet it with solder, and then I'm going to layer solder on top of just the wire so that there'll be plenty of room for this to slide underneath the tissue. Now the tissue here laps up. The kid's real young. He's even still got a deciduous first molar here, bicuspids otherwise, but I mean, he's young. What a mess. Second molar just now coming in on one side. So anyway, we're going to wet the solder and then stack it on top. Now if you don't know what I'm talking about there, I have several videos on soldering. I'm not going to show it in this video. If you don't know how to do that, I have a plethora of videos showing the subject of soldering. So anyway, that's going to be the solder joint. And the wires I have away from the tissue, you can see. And I'm going to relieve anything that's close to this this tori area. Now the screw wants just a standard screw, not a little dinky screw, just a standard screw. This is just a standard Leone Schwartz type screw, and I'm going to put it in like right here, distally. And I've got the wires bent so that I can kind of straddle them and put it in there. It's going to be up real high, and the acrylic on the distal part's going to go down to here. So the part that's going to be pushing on the pallet's going to be not the tori, but distal to the tori, just down in this area right here. And it's just the best we're going to be able to do. And I had to bend this wire up around the tori. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and solder this up. And like I say, if you need to watch a video on how to solder something like this, I've got a bunch of them out there. Just check it out. And then I'm going to pour it up and finish it up, and we'll look at the finished product and see how this turned out. Okay, I've cleaned the wax out of the model and out of this big void down here, and you can see why I blocked that out. If I'd gotten acrylic in there, I'd have never gotten it off without busting up the model real badly. So here's a real good shot of that maxillary tori I was having to deal with. Now the object is to keep the acrylic off of the tori and to have acrylic contacting the palatal walls as much as possible, which is only going to be these areas distal to the tori. So we're going to have the 6-year molars with bands on them, so they're going to be anchored well. We're going to have wires either touching or coming close to touching the lingual surfaces of the posterior teeth mesial to the 6-year molars. So hopefully that'll give us the expansion required. So here's the Haas RPE I came up with. The tori areas, I cut away for those, and I even cut the acrylic back away from the tori contact, any that was left, but I tried to cut it in such a way that it didn't have any of the tori. And so this area right here, which is distal to the tori, and here is going to be contacting the palatal walls. Now the solder joint, let's look at that. When you look at that, you might say, well, that's just a little dollop of solder on top of that wire. It's not going to hold. But once again, I'll refer you to my my videos on soldering. What I did is I wetted this area, and let's see, you might be able to see. Yeah, I think you can see a little better over here. Get a little closer. So this whole area right here is wetted. I used my titanium probe to make sure that solder got down there, so it's all coated real well. That whole mesiolingual surface is coated. And then I added solder on top of it to melt in real lightly into the wetted solder. So that's a very strong solder joint. I've got a playlist on soldering. I'm going to go in there and put all my soldering videos in that one playlist, so they'll be collected together and you can watch them, pick them out and watch them a little easier than on the big playlist, trying to find them individually. All right, so let's put it on the model, see how it works. All right, so this wire is touching the lingual surfaces of those posterior teeth. This one's missing it a little bit, but still we got the 6-year molars are banded up. We're going to be touching the palatal walls here and here, and it's way away from that big void that's in there. That's big. Okay, so let's check out the tori. We got the acrylic cut away from the tori. That's the torus on that side. How about the torus on this side? Yep. So it's away. So that should work. There's still a little room for the orthodontist to make adjustments on the acrylic if it's impinging a bit on the tori. So there you go. For me, a very challenging Haas-type RPE. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.